Welcome to PIA Thinking Bigger. There's a solution that's been around the insurance industry for some time. It's called telematics, and it's designed to measure driving habits, including a driver's speed, mileage, braking patterns, and a lot more. It was introduced more than 25 years ago, and drivers agree to plug a tool into their car, and the tool shares driving data with insurance carriers. It was originally promoted as a usage-based insurance, and the idea was that premiums would be adjusted based on their actual driving patterns. But telematics hasn't had the significant uptake that was expected early on. Some people are concerned about Big Brother watching them and their driving habits, potential negative pricing impacts, and other issues. What happens when you take telematics and think about it differently? Can you shift the perception into a safety value add? Is it possible to turn outcomes from consequences into opportunities by putting the driving data into the hands of independent agents? And that's exactly what Jared Morgan of Paducah Insurance Agency is doing. And he's working to make all of his clients the best drivers possible. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you. Welcome.
Well, I'm excited to dig into this with you today, Jared. Looking forward to hearing about your experience with this and would love to just get started with, how did you get started with telematics? And I wonder if it's because I know you've got some teenage drivers in your house. Did that factor into it, or how did you get started?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I needed to see, and I knew a little bit about telematics, but what Andrew really went into is, hard stops, hard accelerations, cornering, speeding, and phone use, depending on what application you choose, will tell you with a fairly objective measurement whether or not you're a good driver, or maybe not whether or not you're a good driver. Because I would imagine if you put a NASCAR driver behind the car and measured their hard accelerations, hard brakes, it would be great. But whether or not you're more likely to get into an accident, and that's very statistically sound. Connecting those behaviors to driving. And two, phone use will likely show up in hard corners, hard brakes, hard accels, and all those things too. So what I wasn't concerned about handing my kid's driving record to my insurance company so they could rate me appropriately, which is typically how our industry has approached this. I was concerned about my kid getting in a really bad accident with his friends in the car and killing somebody, which is the parent of a teen driver's worst nightmare. And sprinkling the fact that I'm an insurance agent, and it's like professional embarrassment if your own kids are bad drivers and your underwriter's giving you a hard time, right? So I approached it solely from the safety perspective, that I needed to know whether or not my kids. So talking to Andrew, I ended up choosing an app that he resells that measures driving and gives you a FICO score. And that worked really well. The challenge, there's kind of, and I'll talk a little bit, the two options you've got are plugging in a GPS unit to your OODB port for a typical car, and it tracks the GPS for that unique car. And so whoever's driving that car, you come up with a score and you can track those behaviors. Or you can put a phone app on, which is the way some insurance companies have gone that route too. But the phone app tracks every drive.
So are there opportunities to provide this as a value add in your agency and to your personal auto clients?
Absolutely. So there's no question for personal. Let's talk personal lines first, and then we'll talk commercial lines. So for personal lines, there's no question that offering some type of telematics for a fee to your personal lines customers is most appealing to those who have young drivers. No question about it. Now, the companies have tried to do this over the years, but the problem, a lot of people are just not comfortable with their insurance rate getting adjusted based on driving records. Well, I say that. The people who don't drive much and they want usage-based insurance because they drive once a week love the idea of giving GPS measurements to the insurance companies. The rest of us that drive a lot are not super excited about it because the general feeling is we're going to get punished and pay even higher rates than we would have been paying if we were just risk rated based on other factors besides usage. So at that, I really think a lot of people have that's been a problem for the uptake. So that doesn't mean this system is good. It's not necessarily even that we need to be setting insurance rates based on this info, because if you're a bad driver, it's going to show up in your insurance at some point. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So I think really what we've missed as an industry, and this goes for teen drivers and also business owners, is if we have somebody that's consistently a high risk driver because of bad driving behaviors. Number one, we can measure those behaviors and coach them to be better drivers, which is the best outcome. But number two, why are we putting our livelihood and our business success at risk over somebody that's not going to take the care to be a careful driver? Especially if we're giving them the feedback that says, "Hey, man, you're at high risk." So what Andrew Share Market and Share Analytics has done and is there are a lot of GPS systems out there provided by national brands that are, you buy the units, you pay big money, getting them installed may be difficult. They may not work right, and I'll give an example of that in a minute. But then how do you get that support to make sure something's working right? And then on top of that, are you as a business owner or you as a parent going to take the time to teach your kids that, yeah, that comes across harder. It's a lot better when the out of town expert comes in and says, this is how you need to be a good driver. So Andrew has paired fantastic systems, multiple systems, kind of like an independent agent. He's got multiple different systems that he resells, and with service and training to become a great partner vendor for an agent.
So Jared, how are you using this in the commercial side of your business?
Yeah, so similar to parents who want to know that their teen drivers are being safe, business owners who have a lot of autos, we all know how hard it is to hire, especially in more of the blue collar fields, construction especially. You're hiring whoever's going to show up and do the work, but sometimes you're hiring people that don't have great driving records. So what we've found is alerting and educating, and commercial auto rates have gone through the roof from a cost standpoint. So if you're a loss heavy commercial account that have multiple units for fleet, you might lose insurance or your insurance costs might double or triple.
So Jared, you're a busy guy. In addition to your agency, you're also an owner of a construction business. And I know you're in the early stages of using this same solution for your fleet and equipment management. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're looking to accomplish there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of my customers and I, a good friend whose spouse, his wife works for me, uh, you know, shocked still that it happened, but we ended up buying a pretty good sized construction business, excavation business. So we have dump trucks. We've got a fleet of more than 50 units, and we're having issues on our auto fleet with not the dump truck CDL drivers. Those guys understand that if the driving is their livelihood and if they have bad driving records, they got a problem. But with our foremen that are driving pickup trucks, that tends to be where we're seeing the most accidents. So the construction business, again, they had kind of already gone down this path before we got involved in ownership of getting GPS units on their autos and their equipment to track them just for operational purposes, not necessarily because of the drivers. So they had already purchased a national brands solution, had a lot of problems with it. They installed the units, GPS ODB plugins in some older vehicles, and it disabled the trucks where they wouldn't start or they do weird stuff. And so when they reached out to support to this national brand, they didn't get any response. And here they're paying tens of $1,000s a year to buy these units. And they couldn't get them supported. They eventually took them all out and set them on the side and said, "You guys come get this. This is not working for us." So again, that happened shortly about the same time I was working with Andrew to help get my kids driving measured. And I said, "Hey, I think I may have a solution." So we looked at Andrew's process from Insure and came in. We arranged for installation through a local vendor, so it wasn't like we had to take all those trucks into our shop and put the units in them. Cost was comparable, and then we ended up in a spot where we were actually able to put those safety training in place that Andrew provides with the cost of those units. So all the way around. Now we're early on in that process still, but again, we can look and see who our good drivers and bad drivers are objectively, and coach them to do better, and hopefully get them rehabbed to where they're not bad drivers, and we would then look to see our claims reduced at that point.
Jared, who pays for the service, and is it expensive?
Yeah, that's a great question on the cost. So the customer pays. So this is an additional cost you're taking to the customer to say, "Hey, you need to know if your kids are driving well. You need to know if your employees are driving well. Here's how you measure it." And so the employer or the insurance consumer purchases it. I will say too that we have partnered with someone that will allow us to receive some compensation on the selling of these to our customers, which is good for the agency and our sales guys, our producers who are out there trying to take care of their customers. And from a cost standpoint, these cost between 10 and $20 a month per vehicle is generally how. And if you're doing the app, it's a similar cost, be a little bit less cost on the app, but it's still, I would say a good point there would be $20 a month.
Jared, is there a long game when it comes to claims and the relationship with drivers?
Yeah, so there is no doubt we've been in a rising rate environment for insurance for a while. The national law firms are rivaling the roofers for being the least popular people for insurance, the insurance industry. They have really turned small claims into large, $5,000 fender benders, a $50,000 claim for auto now. And the consumers are now, there's been a little bit of lag, but consumers are now getting hit with the bill from the poor driving habits that have been created through 2020, and also cell phone use in cars and legal costs, and then add in the cost of cars, just parts and repairs going up. So consumers are really feeling the pinch, and business owners are really feeling the pinch of the cost of auto rates. If there were only a way that you could control the exposure and the likelihood of a claim in order to reduce and to prove to everyone that you were deserving of better rates, especially in the commercial space. That's what this is. It is simply an objective measurement that says, how likely are you to have claims and how likely are your drivers to have claims? We can tell you how likely you are by measuring it and encouraging you to change behavior to do better. The long game is at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be able to go to our carriers and say, yes, we do have a telematics program in place for this consumer, this business. They've done a really good job of weeding out the bad drivers or coaching them. And look, their loss history is much better. For those who aren't doing it, we could even potentially go to that customer, not be able to write their insurance, but get them on a telematics plan, which we'd be compensated for, and then rehab them until we can provide them with preferred insurance once their loss history gets into a better place. So it's a very good tool in the toolbox, which controls the underlying exposure and driver of claims on the auto fleet side.
Let's end on something that's really important. There are people out there who have been concerned with the privacy issues. Why do you think independent agents are the best stewards of this type of information?
Privacy is a huge deal. It's part of my personal issue with selling our carriers telematics programs that report the driving behavior back to the insurance companies. So what we've seen in the marketplace is the insurance companies. Let's talk about commercial. When there's a higher risk claims heavy account that's trying to get placed, so many times we've seen the carriers come back and say they've got to put telematics on for us to give them this rate. We already know they're a high risk claims heavy account, right? And so the telematics are simply there to really allow the insurance company to objectively measure and find out who the problems are and try to fix it. Well, the minute that data leads to higher rates, there is a bad taste in the consumer's mouth, in the policyholder's mouth. You can't get around it. So it makes way more sense for that data to come to us at the agency level, for us to call the business owner and say, hey, Joe's a terrible driver. You need to rehab him. Let us have our training people come in and talk to him. And if give him as much opportunity as you can through grace and training, and if he's a good employee, let's get him in the right place, or let him go, because Joe ultimately might cost you your insurance rates and double or triple your costs, which will impact your competitive ability to service your customers. And even worse, a bad accident can be a multi-million-dollar loss. We had an oil well contractor in Texas who recently had a $107 million judgment placed against him after a really bad at-fault auto accident. That's out of business. You're done at that point. So it makes way more sense industry-wise for that data to come to us, for us to provide it to or even go to the business owner and us get it on a secondary side, and us help them make better decisions on those underlying risks than it does going to the insurance company and having them increase rates as a result of driving records or driving behavior.